Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of our podcast, Truth Talk with Jennifer and Daisy. We will continue the topic of feminine empowerment because we think there is so many more angles that we can take on. We have decided today to take a take on the between, the balancing between. Do you want to take it on?
Sure. Okay. I was waiting for the rest of the sentence. The balancing between the feminine and the masculine, right? I think it's very important for us to talk about, like, especially because this is where I delve in my work. It is about the inner union. It's about divine union. So inner union first, then external union, and again, like everything in my work and in my own process, it always comes back to unity consciousness. So, yeah, I think a good place to start is probably going to a little bit about what we were speaking about in another one of our videos, where we were making mention that there is a powerful movement that has been going on specifically in the last couple of years, right? Where we've been seeing a lot of women that have been called to study under a lineage of priestesshood, for example, which priestesshood, as we know, and if you don't, I'll just remind you or let you know, it's basically just service to the divine, absolute surrender and service to whatever wants to come through you for humanity, for the collective, you allow it to come through. So yeah, we've been seeing a lot of women that have been waking up to different lineages. A lot of us are working with Isis, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, for example. And so when I'm going to speak from experience, sorry. When I went through some of the first containers that I went through, I did already mention in another video that I observed that there was a lot around the reclamation of the feminine, and yet it did actually leave us, and I'm saying us because it was a generalized, especially in one of the containers, it was a generalized idea or feeling that it left us a little bit in ostracizing our own inner masculine. It was so focused on the feminine that the masculine was in fact dethroned. And so, yeah, it's all about coming back into that inner balance. Um, I think, first of all, we need to start by recognizing, what these energies represent. So, for example, you could go with your beautiful divine feminine. If you want your divine feminine to be flourishing, the energies that she is sitting in is, for example, radiance. She's warm natured. She is magnetic. She is confident. She is absolutely empathic. She is vulnerable, but she's playful, but she's mystical and she's magical. She's emotionally open. And yet, we actually, to get there, we have to witness in ourselves whether we are in our wounded aspect or whether we are in fact in our masculine aspect. So like a wounded aspect would have low self-esteem. She would definitely be engaging in people-pleasing tendencies. She would be a little bit that damsel in distress, if that makes sense. She would also be like afraid to speak up. She would be ignoring her intuition because she feels disconnected from, beautiful topic from last week, her womb. She feels disconnected from her femininity, from her portal of creation. And then, however, you've got your masculine, when we're on that pendulum, right? Where we go all the way to our inner masculine polarity, that feminine that is in her masculine polarity, she's actually defensive, she's distrustful, she's actually emasculating the masculine. And so, why am I mentioning this? Because I actually felt like, I love my little analogy of the pendulum. I was trying to heal my feminine, and yet it put me on a complete extreme to my inner masculine being in his wounded aspect of competition, of distrust, defensiveness, what else, for example? Yeah, emasculating, never being relaxed, right? And so this is definitely not feminine. I don't know if you want to jump in here, Jen.
No, keep going for now.
Okay, I keep going for now. So yeah, this is a little bit about the energies, how we experience this feminine polarity within us. Even though she can go to the masculine polarity. So let's focus a little bit on the inner masculine polarity so that we can start to identify a little bit of what we want to be looking out for, right, to come into that balance. So we can also observe that the wounded masculine, and everything that I'm saying is also going to tie into the exteriorized polarities, right? Not just the inner polarities, because in the end, like I said, it is about balance with everyone inside, the union outside. So, a wounded masculine, for example, or a wounded masculine energy is aggressive. He's controlling. He is like detached. He has extreme pride. He is quite ego-centered and he generally seeks to dominate. Um, non-communicative, very short tempers, very hot tempers all of a sudden. And yeah, like non-committal, very detached. I think I already said that, but anyway. So then the masculine, when he's actually in his feminine polarity, he starts to express himself, and I'm not just talking about the exterior again, just making sure we know, also the interior. He is flighty. He is he's kind of expecting princess treatment at the same time. You know how when I said that, polarity of the feminine, when it's masculine, it's like in this damsel in distress. The masculine does it too. The masculine energy goes into this, you know what? I want to be treated as a princess, which I don't think it's too bad, So I like having that partner that lets me do facials with him and stuff like that. I think it's fun. But when that becomes a habit, that is wounded, or feminine polarity. There's like also like excessive sexual partners. There is he becomes avoidant, he becomes non-committal, he cannot properly pair, and he's more go with the flow. We've spoken a lot about the fact that the masculine energy is very logics and rational based. So when a masculine is not in that, we're not actually balanced. So where does that, for example, manifest in a feminine's life, having that wounded masculine? We are both entrepreneurs. We have our businesses and we are very feminine. And yet, for our businesses to flow, we need to understand that we need to have a masculine container for our businesses. What does this mean? This translates into us needing logics and rationality, structure, organization, and consistency, if that makes sense to you. So, yeah, that's just like the if that inner polarity of ourselves were in that wounded, or it would be excessively feminine, we would be lacking that in our businesses, just so that we could relate a little bit how it affects us, right? So yeah, let me go on to divine masculine energy, because in the end, when you do balance your polarities, you do ascend them both, and so they do become divine. So the divine masculine energy that we are aiming for is a little bit more. He's a leader. He's stable. He is grounded. He doesn't fear vulnerability. He's very communicative. He's very committed. He's very honest. He's very sincere. So these are just little glimpses, just a few different adjectives. But yeah, I think that is probably the basis of what we need to know about these energies.
Yeah, super interesting. Thank you so much. My mind is like buzzing, trying to keep up with all of the information, and at the same time, like also in seeing this within me, but also seeing it in the external. Like I think when we listen to this, then we all have like different images of people coming up and like, this person, that's why they're doing that, and this person is doing that, and then we can also see it in the collective, right? Like a whole country acting in this energy,
Definitely.
like that's super interesting for me. That is always good to see if a lot of people or a whole society or country is acting from a distorted part of that, what kind of upheaval it creates in the world as well. So for me, that is also so that, and that the interesting thing about that, this can happen if one person is not balanced within themselves and they're becoming a leader, they can actually push a whole country to be disbalanced as well. And then that can in turn create a whole world that is disbalanced. And I think that's basically what we're seeing. And
Mm,
obviously, we cannot pinpoint it and say it's this person. I mean, we could definitely mention some people, but it's difficult because usually it's a few that are doing it at the same time, right? It's like a few at
mm,
the same time that are going into this distortion. And I think it's also something that it's not spoken about because not many people even realize that that's a uh, something that happens. And for me, it's like that's what the whole world is about. The whole world is trying to create balance, equilibrium again. So harmony, that's like that. It often see it as an image when you have a rubber band and you stretch it and you let it go, it flies, right? So that's basically what the earth does as well. She just tries to create balance again. So if we are overstretching it in one direction, it also overstretches in the other direction and the rubber band is going to fly and disruption is going to happen, which we see right now uh,
mm,
with
mm,
all of the upheaval everywhere. Like I'm also talking about nature's upheaval, like the volcano eruptions, the tsunamis, the earthquakes, da 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 da. I talk about the things we do as a society, as countries, the wars, the crimes, the like dictatorship, all of these things, then we have the same thing happening in businesses, right? We have the same thing happening at schools. We have it happening at workplaces, like in
mm,
little team workplaces. We have it happening in friend groups. It's like, and then we have it happening within ourselves, in ourselves as well. So I'm like, where? See, everything through the nothing or the nothing through the everything is something like that.
mm, mm. Yeah, that's we were having that conversation previously, weren't we? Where, I said perhaps unpopular opinion, but we do need to understand that there is, a law of polarity, there is a law of equality balance, perhaps. And so, for light to exist, there must be shadow. For peace to exist, there must be war. And so we were sort of speaking about the fact that no, I don't mean to say that the more that we come into peace and into awakening, the more that we're going to come into, especially like it's not going to be perpetuated forever. But going on what you just said now, it reminded me of our conversation because um, that that extreme fluctuation that we are witnessing right now, that we are feeling, I do believe that it is because of that law of polarity and balance that needs to express itself universally. There is collective, and I love the word you used the other day. You said that the ascension is being, well, I mean, I don't remember the exact word, but you did mention the ascension is being very, very rapid at the moment. It's accelerated. We're having an accelerated ascension at the moment collectively. And so I do believe that this is kind of why we are seeing so much explode around us. But yeah, like I said, not that it's going to be indefinitely perpetuated, but I do think that that's one of the reasons. And so, yeah, I think that we can see it like you said in nature, we can see it in politics at the moment, but I think that we can also see it in our human relations, in our closest relationships. I think what I'm observing a lot also is like there is a closer movement towards sacred union, if that makes sense, sacred partnership. It's no longer a thing of, relationship for having the relationship or for the sake of it. Definitely not for the picture perfect white picket fence, three kids and the dog, you know what I mean? If that's not what you want, if that's what you want, love it for you. But, if you're only doing that because that's what society said, then, it's probably not gonna make you happy. Yeah, that's that I'm hearing now, that societal gaslighting, but that's probably a little bit off topic at the moment.
Another time that we can tie that in. No, I think that's really important. Um, as you like tying it back to our own stories, because I think that's where it all ties back to. But yeah, it's like this journey that you described so beautifully that you have taken, like and seeing that some truth that got presented to you wasn't actually your truth, and also it doesn't feel like it's the universal truth as well. So it's like creating something new, and and then also seeing within myself right now, I also see certain distortions happening and certain things want to upgrade to meet my new reality. But
Mm.
it's and then if I upgrade, like let's say my feminine parts, then my masculine has to upgrade, like things like that to create balance within myself again. And I think this has been a journey for me for the last 4 or 5 years, like an
Mm.
intense but good journey, like choosing to step out of the system and creating my own business is definitely has been the biggest leap I've taken. I mean, if you know tarot cards, then the Fool, that's like one of my favorite cards. But that's basically the jump I did jump into what is it called? An opening between a valley? No, that's not a valley. Jumping down a cliff. A cliff.
Mhm. Mhm.
Jump into a cliff not knowing what is happening and just flying, flying, flying. And you're like, where is the ground? Will I ever reach ground? Will I forever be flying? I kind of feel a little bit in there. So in having to do that, I have to work and look at a lot of these balances within myself, where I think for me, jumping off that cliff was the biggest choice I could make to nourish my massive desires, and maybe they're my feminine desires, who knows, of like freedom and having a life lived in congruence with my cycle, for example, and my desires, and listening to my innate voice and wisdom within, more than having to listen to someone else telling me how I have to do my work. And
Mhm.
in that, I obviously had to also create structure. But can I create structure with fluidity? Can I create structure with like a lightness or something like that? So it's a lot about this. And I mean, I'm like wondering while I speak, and where I heard you speak, I was like, where am I right now? And I don't actually know, but I feel like the balance is, I can see it. Maybe like in the beginning, this happens, right? If you, it's where a child, the children sit on one sits on the right, one on the left. What is that
The
called?
seesaw.
Seesaw. Yeah, it's like the seesaw. So once you're still like, I jumped off the cliff, so it was like, whoosh, and this catapulted up, and then this, and now it feels like it's calming down. There's still some
Mm.
movement, and maybe there will never be stillness because honestly, what in nature is truly still? Like nothing is still.
No,
Nothing.
no,
There's
no.
perpetual movement in everything. Movement is the core of our existence. I don't know where that came from, but it came. So there will always be a bit of movement, but the movement doesn't have to be like this because that is really like disruptive and really nerve-wracking and like super exhausting. Whereas when it's like this, it's like it becomes a dance, right? Actually, it feels like dancing. Yeah.
Definitely. I love that. Your seesaw analogy, I think, is my pendulum analogy. You know, when and for me, the pendulum, obviously, I don't think it's going to stay dead straight forever. I think it's going to do more of a little dance, like you said, but something that's not going to make me get dizzy constantly. But yeah, just what you were to respond to what you were saying. Um, I think it goes back a little bit to one of our previous videos where we do as feminines, we do want to drop into that softness. We want to not just the cycle, it's that we, you know, I think this started like in the 60s, 70s. I mean, I'm open to being corrected, but when the feminine empowerment movement started, like socially, right? There was more of movements to voting rights and working rights and equal pay, etc. There was like this idea that we are equal. We want the same because we are equal. And while, yes, we are equally valuable, yes, we are equally worthy of everything, we are not the same. We are not the same energetically. We are not the same physically. We are not made to, well, we're definitely not made to work under what society has indoctrinated us to believe that we have to, you know, produce, because otherwise you're nothing, you're no one. If you don't produce something, what are you good for? But yeah, it's like I think part of the feminine empowerment movement when it wasn't based on energetic balance, when it wasn't, because let's be honest with ourselves, this is new. I think this is why these topics are still, so necessary to get out there to speak about them, because it is still quite new for us to be learning how to balance and to realize that it is okay that we are different, that we need more slowness, we need more softness. We're delicate creatures, and we are masculine energy is raw creativity. And however, we are, the creative being by excellence because we have our portal space. Our creativity comes directly from the womb, which is where consciousness comes into a body, into a physical vessel. So I think it is something that we just need to be patient. But I love, like you said, we need to really observe ourselves, catch ourselves out. This self-observation, I think, is what actually it leads to our ego degradation. And I know that you and I both use the word ego differently also. So yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Something that you just said, I was like, because you said we need softness. I'm like, I think the whole world actually needs softness. The whole
Absolutely.
world is so tough and tight and tense. It's like the whole world needs softness, and that's basically where we can tie it in again. We can be an inspiration in that. And we should be an inspiration in that. And once more, I would like to speak here that we all have feminine and masculine sides within ourselves. And I actually also have a non-binary side within me. We haven't even spoken about that, but I know that you and me both see that. We both know that some spirits are actually more non-binary than they have follow any gender. It's our human existence that follows a gender. So just so you also know that. But this is like this very over masculine driven world and
Mm,
this distorted overly masculine driven world, it's
mm,
so bloody exhausting for all of us.
mm.
It's exhausting. Like I'm like, it's exhausting for the animals. When I said that, I saw the animals just like, oh my God, it's exhausting for nature, animals, for us humans. I don't actually know who is not exhausted by it. I think
Mm.
there is certain human beings that feel like they're thriving. And we could tie that into last week's topic when I said, yeah, they think they're thriving, but they're thriving on drugs and alcohol and probably sex and what is it called? Gambling. Because they're all like, duck, 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 duck. It's all the hardness. And then they collapse out of exhaustion, go to rehab, have to go to a psychiatric ward because they're like having a burnout. So it's like the whole world needs this softness. So why cannot that be the inspiration to
Absolutely. Sorry, were you done?
I don't know if I was done. I was like, this is the finished sentence for the whole existence of the world. So we might as well be done forever with the podcasts now.
I was just because I really, I heartfelt what you said there. I felt a little boom boom. Um, the world does need softness. But let's remember that this is something that we're going to achieve by balancing our inner polarities and becoming divine, unified beings. Because we can't forget that as individual expressions of source, we are still the one whole. And so the more that we work on ourselves, the more that we are actually doing the work for the collective. This is something that at the beginning of my spiritual journey, especially when I started channeling, I was being told, we're doing work for the collective. And it used to feel like it was very vertiginous. It used to feel very deep. It used to feel like, oh, I'm doing work for the collective. Oh, I'm doing work for the collective. Um, it's nothing separate from you. That was my ego's perception 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. Now I understand what I do for self, I do for collective. So the more that I come into my inner union, the more, because yes, like you said, non-binary, I call it androgynous. I told you about my beautiful vision about how these polarizations came from an androgynous being. It just created two of itself so that it could start to reproduce, if that makes sense. So yeah, I feel like coming into that gnosis. The more I do for self, the more I do for collective. The more I unify within me, the more we unify collectively. And I'm not just speaking about physically, I'm speaking about energetically. Let's remember that the divine energetic polarities are both about stability, about vulnerability, about confidence, about being empathic, being nurturing, being integral, being honest, being sincere. So these are qualities that we embody when we are that balanced divine being, that unified being. So if we do that within, we will bring that to the world. And that is the softness, I believe, that you are referring to.
Yeah, I like it. And the whole time you were speaking, I was like, I love that I can now tie it back into a very like physical, even like scientific construct of a topic. Words are not coming out right. So I'm a trained social worker and I love sociology. I'm like an absolute nerd in that and philosophy. So in sociology, there is this concept that to restructure a society, there is three takes you can do. You can do the bottom up approach, which is revolution, which is the inhabitants of a country go on the streets and demonstrate and create disruption. We can use the French Revolution as an example for that, right? So we all know that. I've long time said it's done. This is done. This is not the way how we create change anymore. We have to top down, which is the laws change, so therefore society changes, right? And we have the inside out, the middle, which is this is the one you're speaking about. When you're saying you change yourself, you change society, that's the middle. That's my approach to everything. That's like the whole bloody reason why I do what I do. It
Mm,
is to inspire others to start changing their life, who in turn inspire others to change their life. So we are doing the middle approach. And I think that's actually the most powerful one because the middle one, you are exploding upwards and downwards at the same time, outwards.
mm,
So and it doesn't come with a fight.
mm,
Both approaches, from the top down and the bottom up, it actually creates fight and resistance in people, right? But if you
mm,
change people from within and they become an inspiration for others and they in turn change from within, and then that's like a ripple effect. I keep coming back to this ripple effect, but this is the peaceful resistance
mm,
that I keep speaking about. And I just recently on Instagram, don't know if you read it, spoke about the peaceful full resistance of sensuality. So that is also a good takeaway. But it is, and we can call it today the peaceful resistance of softness, bringing people within their body back to softness. And that creates more softness. I'm like, oh my goodness, I just want to go to sleep and lie down right now because that's like my whole body's like, yes, please.
mm. Mm, I love that because I'm feeling melty all of a sudden. Every time we do a podcast, every time I put something out there, it's like, well, like I said, I'm going through my priestess initiation at the moment, right? I've always embodied that archetype, but I'm actually having an actual initiation at the moment. But understanding what service really is, it's like I feel that when whatever needed to come through me at that moment came through, it's this gratitude, it's this joy, but then it's this melt, like, oh, she's done so good today. And I've even started referring to myself in third person, she. I've unidentified to the extent where I'm just like, oh, this one's happy this morning, or she's a little bit, maybe she needs a little bit of caffeine. Um, I'm having these conversations lately with myself and the energies that surround me, I guess. But yeah, it's like unidentifying with the ego and or degrading it. And this is what this inner divine union actually is what has allowed me to degrade the ego to that extent where I have begun to, I don't want to say dissociate, but yeah, unidentify myself from the identification. So I think in the end, coming into this balance is good for us on all levels. It's good for us individually because we get to witness ourselves and go through our karmic lessons and whatnot. It's good for us on a collective level because we get to come into that bigger balance and peace that we're all yearning for. Um, so yeah, I think it's an all-round experience, the coming into the balance.
For sure. For sure. And so needed.
Mm, definitely.
So needed. I would actually just like to invite whoever is listening here to just sit for a moment and like feel within you, where do you feel like you're not in balance? And where does your body and your being actually desires more balance? And you know that I work with people and I'm like looking at their posture, and like everyone has a disbalance between left and right. And left and right in our body also ties into the disbalance between these energies. So it's like we all have it. So once more, if there's anyone out there who says like, I'm fully balanced, I don't believe you. I honestly don't believe you. But this, like, sit down and sit for yourself and feel, where are you not in balance, and how, what is needed for you to come back into balance? Just a tiny bit. Don't think you need to be perfect tomorrow, but what is the next little step that you can do?
Mm, mm. Yes, bit by bit, take the pressure off. Mm, definitely.
Yeah, do you have anything that you want to say as last words to wrap it up?
No, I think we covered today's angle quite well. I think we brought it to a beautiful place. Um, yeah, just that the last things that I was saying, just remembering that, it starts from within and it does have, as you said, that beautiful ripple effect without.
Perfect. So thank you everyone for listening. Please follow us on our individual channels. Follow us here so you don't miss the next episode coming out. And also let us know if you have a desire for a certain subject or theme that you would like to hear us talking about.
Yeah, thank you guys.